All right, friends, we got Untouchable, the truth about leprosy, which I got to say, I learned a lot about the myths about leprosy as I was
Yeah.
studying this case.
This is another one, similar to HIV and AIDS, where everybody thinks they know everything about it.
Mm.
And then you're like, that's not true.
That's not true.
It's literally so wrong.
I think one of the biggest things for me is I found out it's actually not that contagious.
Yeah, that's a big one that I was like, it's actually really hard
to get.
People thought it was so contagious and everywhere and all this stuff. So
I meant to look this up before the episode. In House of the Dragon, does the king have leprosy?
Yeah.
Yes, severe form of leprosy.
That makes sense. Yeah, because they kept like pulling off his skin.
Yep.
And stuff. Yeah.
Remember the face ended up changing by the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. As I was like learning about it, I was like, why does this sound so familiar?
Yeah. There's a lot
House of the Dragon.
In the case file this week, we're going to talk about another movie that references specifically a leprosy case. But yeah, that one, the movie I'm going to say did not have as detailed and long-term view of it. But yeah, you're right. That was leprosy.
Well, let's get started.
So now you know.
Now you know. Welcome, Cadaver Crew.
Get your dark little minds right and settle in.
Class is in session and the cadaver is already on the table.
I'm B.
And I'm Sam.
And this is the Cadaver's Lessons.
So we kind of talked about it. We're talking about leprosy. We're going to find that this specifically affects the nervous system, speaking even more specifically, the peripheral nervous system and the skin the most for patients. And yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of myth busting in this episode.
Yep. Yeah. I think historically, we're going to talk a lot about how nobody bothered to treat these patients.
Yeah, even though it's just a bacteria.
Yeah, they're like, you suck. Bye.
Bye. See you later.
Shun over there. Go over there. Instead of actually helping these patients. Because we've talked about in all of our episodes so many amazing people that have invented or created or understood illnesses. You telling me that nobody jumped on this bandwagon?
Absolutely not.
They were just like, man, that sucks.
That sucks. You stay in your house now, okay?
Yeah, stay over there. Don't come over here.
Yeah.
It sucks.
All right, vitals check.
Yeah.
How are we doing?
We're doing pretty good.
We're doing good. Not pretty good.
We're doing good. We're going to go on vacation.
Going to Florida this week, which means there's been lots of recording this week to get ready for that. But we're ready.
Yeah, ready for a vacation for sure. Not so ready to pack because I'm a huge procrastinator. And
we have our list done, though, which is the hardest part of all of it.
Yeah.
So we have that. We don't really have a bad other than the fact that we're unprepared for vacation.
Yeah.
Except we know our bad will be flying with our 15-month-old. Let's be honest. We flew when she was 7 months old. 7 months old. It was perfect. She slept the whole time. She was the sweetest little baby there ever was. People loved her. And now that kid hasn't stopped moving for the last 5-ish months. And the thought of keeping her still on a 4-hour flight, I got no hope.
It's daunting. Yeah, considering that she just sprinted through Petco today.
Yeah, that was our morning activity.
And I barely could keep up with her. As I was trying to clean up all the stuff that she was like taking off the shelves. She's really into taking cans off of shelves or out of cases and stacking them and then just leaving them all.
And running. And you're like, wait, baby, we got to pick this up.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting. We'll let you know how it goes.
ER this week. The one case that stood out to me after I wrote the show notes for today, this week I had a diabetic foot wound that a patient unfortunately was severely septic based on labs and numbers from. And there was I couldn't figure out if it was a lack of patient education or a lack of patient understanding, maybe a mix of both. This patient had already lost all the toes of one foot, secondary to diabetic foot wound complications. And she came in and her heart rate was really high and I think she had a fever. And so I was like, we got to find the source of this infection. And I asked her how her other foot was doing. And she was like, I don't look at that foot. And there's all 5 toes on this other foot. I don't look at that foot. I get in the shower, I clean my feet, I get out, I dry them off, I put on socks. And if you don't know, in poorly controlled diabetes, you get peripheral neuropathy, which is going to relate to today's case a lot. You get peripheral neuropathy, which means you don't have the same sensation as most people do. And when that happens, these wounds will happen and you don't feel them, and then you don't take care of them and they become bad very fast. And so this patient did indeed have a diabetic foot wound that she was septic from. Last time I checked, she was still in the hospital. It was not osteomyelitis, which for my medical friends is the biggest concern about any sort of wound in a diabetic patient. But I was asking her, like, what are your sugars at home? She's like, typically about 500 or 600. I was like, wow, that's really, really high. What meds are you on? I stopped taking my metformin because it upsets my stomach. And if you don't know, number one side effect of metformin is GI upset. And so I just couldn't tell if this was like a lack of education, which seems kind of hard after you've already lost all your other toes, that somebody doesn't sit you down and say, this is very, very serious.
Yeah.
Or just a lack of understanding of how important all of this was.
Mm.
But yeah, as I was writing my notes, I just kept thinking about this patient and her peripheral neuropathy and all the things that kind of led to her being so sick in the ER. Yeah.
Man, I couldn't imagine having my toes essentially fall off.
She was relatively young, in her 30s. Yeah.
Well, I guess we have another parenting chaos moment.
Well, you're the one that basically let her child run away.
This is not what happened. So what happened is that we have been trying to get her to walk places as like teaching independently, trying to like walk from the car to the house or walk from the car in a safe sidewalk area from the car into the building or stuff like that. And so we were walking from our house to the mailbox, which is not very far. It's like 5 houses down.
Yeah.
Because it's a community mailbox thing. And we made it there just fine. Some redirection. She likes to go up into people's driveways. And then so like corralled her. We got to the mailbox and I got out the mail, but we had a package in one of the other mailboxes. So you have to have the special key. She was holding the special key because I had handed it to her, which was probably my first mistake.
Yeah, that's exactly where you went wrong. Because did she throw a fit when you took the special key from her?
We did okay. Because I traded it for the mailbox key. So just a little switcheroo, Indiana Jones style, this for that. And I was holding the mail and she was right next to me. And then I looked over to set the mail on top of the mailbox so that I could go get the key from her and open the package mailbox. And I literally looked back and she's not there. And I was like, what the fuck? Where are you? And I looked slightly upwards and she's 5 feet away. And I was like, I literally turned around for, I don't know, a quarter of a second.
Yeah.
And then looked back and she's that far away. And man, she just constantly reminds me that you always got to be on our toes.
Yes.
You always got to be ready because you never know.
And she's so fast. We've talked about this before. She's so fast.
I'm scared for our future. She's a runner.
She's a runner. She's a track star. She can run away when it gets hard.
No, she's not going to do that. Just take the first 2 lines.
Okay, fair. All right, let's get started. So a few things to know about leprosy before we really dive into history of it. The formal name is Hansen's disease. Had you ever heard of that?
I had never heard of that, but I did find that in my research because we're not really supposed to say leprosy anymore. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Leprosy is all up in my notes.
Leprosy is all up in my notes because I'd never heard of Hansen's disease.
Yeah, it's because leprosy has a really poor connotation to it.
Absolutely.
And people have stigmatized it, so they changed the name so that it wouldn't have so much stigma around it.
And that's fair. That's fair. It is a chronic infection that's caused by Microbacterium leprae, which obviously is a type of bacteria.
M. leprae for short.
M. leprae. And there's another one called something which we'll get to in my notes. It typically targets skin and nerves, and we'll get to why scientists think that that's why it does it. And then the cardinal signs, which I just wanted to talk about, but there's so many signs and symptoms of this because there's like 6 different types, as there typically is, and all of them have different signs and symptoms. But the cardinal signs: hypopigmented, so like your skin coloring is less somewhere than the rest of your body, or erythematous, so red skin patches with loss of sensation, so not feeling it. Thickened peripheral nerves. I've never felt that in person, so I don't know what that feels like, but I imagine it would be pretty obvious on an exam for it to be a cardinal sign. And then acid-fast bacilli detected on skin smears or biopsy, which gets all into the different type of bacteria, which I did not go into today because I hate it. But that's the quick crash course on it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the history and why it's not called leprosy anymore.
Yeah.
So leprosy is considered one of the oldest infectious diseases ever known in human history. And so is the inhumane treatment of those people with the disease. They go hand in hand. As soon as leprosy came on the scene, so did the poor treatment of people who had leprosy.
We love treating people bad.
Yeah. It was consistently thought as a punishment from God.
Boy.
It has a lot of religious ties, the disease itself.
Oh boy.
Which is a whole different conversation. But, like,
Yeah.
why? Why would you do that? The first references of leprosy can be found and described in literature of ancient civilizations. It is impossible to know exactly when or where it emerged or how it moved through the continents, but we do have a few literature mentions that we can look back on and say that's probably leprosy that they were talking about.
Yeah.
And then between that and some of the movements that we know, including slave trade, wars, and just natural migration patterns of people, we generally have an idea of how maybe it spread and came into really Europe and then also into America.
Yeah. And I just want to say, like, for history to say we generally have an idea, it's honestly so fair because no one even today is willing to say confidently, this is spread through the upper respiratory tract. They think it is, but no one's saying it confidently. And so it'll be interesting to see how history dives through this.
Yeah. The first time leprosy was actually dated through archaeological remains, so not found in literature, but actually found in remains, was in India. And those remains were dated back 2000 BCE.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's long ago.
Yeah. Long time.
Long time.
Yeah. This, along with molecular studies, have shown that the disease spread following human migration paths from East Africa towards Asia and became prominent in Eastern and Central Europe about 40,000 years ago. And then in the Americas, the last 500 years.
It's been around a long time.
Long time. All of this suggests that the last Neanderthals and first Homo sapiens had contact with leprosy.
Yeah. I mean, how else?
Before, essentially, people became how we think of people today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is wild.
That is pretty wild to see something date that far back.
Yeah. So the first literature references are found in India, Egypt, and China. Within India's references, the term kastha was used in ancient Indian medicine to describe skin diseases in general. This included leprosy. Today, the term is specifically used for leprosy. So today in India, they use that to describe leprosy. The original reference was found in the Laws of Manu, which is considered to be written from 500 to 1300 BCE. There is also a clear description of clinical signs and treatments in the Shastra Samhita, an ancient medical text written in 600 BCE. In this text, they actually include two subgroups, the Maha Kastha and the Cassandra Kastha. So major and minor skin diseases.
Which is interesting because a part of those 6 types, and I say 6, we'll count them when we get down, it is based on how much it's affecting the skin versus the nerves versus all the things.
Yeah. So in reference to the major skin diseases, Arun Kastha is considered the type which refers to leprosy, characterized by the colored patches and anesthesia and deformity of the limbs, suppuration of the affected part, breaking down of local skin, falling off figures, and sinking of noses.
Yeah. And those are what we're seeing in like disease that has gotten really far and not been treated. But as you can imagine in these times, it's not being treated.
Yeah, it gets pretty far.
Yeah.
Before it becomes obvious enough to treat.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the treatment, Indian physicians use tuvarka oil, or known now as chalmugra oil, derived from Hypocarpus curzi, aka a tropical tree. And this oil is administered both orally and topically and would not be introduced to Western medicine until the 20th century. However, this oil is the one and only
that actually works
treatment that has some impact on it.
Wow.
Yeah. Now it's not
curable.
It's not going to cure.
Yeah.
But it is going to like help.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's really exciting.
This is really the only treatment that is found in history that is consistent.
Yeah.
Like there is, like we said earlier, there is no other treatments. They don't try to treat it really.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is really the only kind of treatment path that we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's still sold in like local markets.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So there's also references that leprosy existed in ancient Egypt, including writing in the Ebris Papyrus in 1550 BCE and the Burgos Papyrus in 1350 to 1200 BCE. In both these texts, they describe a condition called Ichudu,
Referencing leprosy.
referencing leprosy.
Wow.
The disease was reported among slaves coming from Sudan, indicating possible African origins or transmission routes as well. Ancient Chinese medical literature also contains references that may be connected to leprosy. There are multiple writings from around 500 BCE and beyond that describe possible cases of leprosy. Now, they're not calling it that, those signs and symptoms, the decay, all that kind of thing, that is being seen throughout their medical literature is just not being defined. So from these origins and probably many more, leprosy began to spread through the Mediterranean world. Many historians believe that leprosy was introduced into Greece by Persian troops in the 4th century BCE, possibly during the campaigns of Darius.
It's wild how much it's spreading for how it's not that contagious. So was it super contagious at one point and our body got better at fighting it off? But
I think hygiene too.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in like if you're going on long military campaigns, you're not like getting to bathe that often. And then you're holding slaves and prisoners of war. And so those people are also not in great conditions. Plus your immune system is already being attacked by probably a crap ton of things. So I think it's probably
Mix of things,
yeah. It may have also spread through the conquest of Alexander the Great, whose military movements spanned India, Egypt, and the Mediterranean world.
It's interesting also that you keep bringing up India because they're so one of the large places that has it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably why they had so many writings on it to begin with,
Yeah.
The Greek historian Herodotus described a condition that may have been leprosy that led to social exclusion, suggesting early recognition of the contagious and stigmatized nature of the disease. So, see, this is happening way, way, way back.
People love isolating people out.
Yeah. Probably the next text that everybody relates leprosy to is the Bible. The Old Testament refers to a disease called Zareth, which would later be translated to Greek as lepra. Not all biblical descriptions correspond exactly with modern leprosy, but the severe portrayals of the disease deeply influenced society.
Yeah.
So the way it was described in the Bible had a big impact on how people saw others with leprosy, and it created those deep divisions and reactions that caused a lot of harm towards those people that were suffering from leprosy.
Yeah. I mean, all it takes, we've talked about it in previous episodes, like one big text, one person that's loud enough to talk to deem something, and then it becomes true.
Yeah. The biblical descriptions associated the disease with sin and divine punishment. So, like, these people deserved to have it. Because of this, afflicted individuals were excluded from society, contributing to the enduring stigma that has gone on through centuries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, generally, I think I get into it, but you get stripped of everything.
Yeah.
That you own, that you are, your family title, everything. So you have no choice but to become essentially poor or live in a leper house. Yeah. And it's just a really, really awful way to go about living. So
on top of the fact that this disease causes awful things. It causes disfigurement. People lose limbs because of it because they can't feel the burns. They can't feel the cuts. They can't feel these things. So on top of you losing everything, your personal self-identification, is that the word I'm going for, also changes.
Yeah. So in classic Greek and Roman medicine, it is possible that early Greek physicians such as Hippocrates, because we can't get rid of this guy,
he's always around,
and Aristotle may have encountered cases of leprosy, but there's not a clear demonstration of accurate understanding of the disease from this time. So even if they did encounter it, they did not have any solidified answers or even descriptions of what it was.
We're not giving this guy credit this time.
Yeah.
You can sit this one out.
Yeah, just chill out, man. The first precise clinical description was provided by Aretaeus of Cappadocia around 150 CE.
So this is the first time we're really seeing a document.
Yeah. He referred to the disease as elephas, possibly because the thickened skin resembled an elephant.
Interesting.
Yeah. He described the symptoms in details and speculated that the disease could be transmitted through respiration and noted that advanced cases usually had poor prognosis. It's like, thank you.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
His treatments included dietary modification, cauterization with iron and fire, herbal remedies, viper flesh, elephant tooth shavings, animal fats. They were just
They're throwing the kitchen sink at these people.
Yeah, speaking of House of the Dragon, that's how it felt in that
Yes.
too.
Yeah,
It was
I
just
would
like,
agree.
oh, let's try this.
Yeah.
Or let's burn this off, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just what they were going with. So those treatments were largely ineffective, but do reflect the medical theories of the time. Like, that's where they were medically, so that's...
And also, like, sure, we're joking about them throwing the kitchen sink, but at least they're trying.
Yeah.
We've seen previously where they say, oh, we're not going to try for this.
So at this time, leprosy became widespread throughout Europe around the Middle Ages, and the main cause of the spread was Roman expansion and the Crusades, which increased contact between Europe and the Middle East.
Yeah.
The disease reached its peak prevalence around 1400 CE. During this time, individuals with leprosy were subjected to severe discrimination, isolation in lazar houses, which were special institutions located outside of cities.
Yeah, you can't be in the city center.
Yeah, and they were often required to wear distinctive clothing and carry bells to warn others of their presence.
My God.
Yeah.
Man.
I know.
People suck.
People do suck.
Bells? Like, what are we, a little house cat?
Yeah, I know.
Man.
Yeah. It's shitty.
It's so bad.
Yeah. In some regions, a leper mass was conducted after diagnosis to symbolize the social death of the individual.
As if the rest isn't enough.
Yeah. Their property was buried and they were excluded from family and professional life. So cut off from everything you ever known. All your property was taken away from you and it was buried. It wasn't even given to somebody else. And then you were...
Well, you could give it to someone else through your property.
I think it was contaminated.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
You could
Okay,
give
you
the
could give the
leprosy.
leprosy. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, these people were just...
awful.
Well, yeah, the people were awful that were doing this to them. But, I mean, if you had leprosy, you were... It was essentially a death sentence in more ways than one.
Yes. But also, like, if you're going to go socially isolate them outside the city anyways, let them keep their shit.
I know, right?
Why are we burying it? It's one of the only things they got left.
I don't know. So... there was a sharp decline in Europe around the 14th and 15th century, and this was probably due to improved living conditions. Also, more devastating epidemics caused high mortality, possibly killing off a majority of those who were already weakened by leprosy. So things like tuberculosis, syphilis, bubonic plague, influenza, smallpox, that stuff was all hitting Europe hard around this time. And so probably most of the people who already had leprosy just were already dying from other things. And so the disease was kind of, I guess, killed off with the patients that had it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's sad. But
it wasn't really killed off, though, as we've...
Yeah, it's not gone. It's still around.
I have a really big issue with the definition of eradication right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, around this time, the infection of Mycobacterium tuberculosis may have provided partial cross immunity against Mycobacterium leprae. So that could also have been something to show the decline. Yeah. So if you had Mycobacterium tuberculosis first, you could have been protected later on.
Which makes sense.
Leprosy, yeah. This would be important later in recognition that the BCG vaccine offers partial protection against leprosy.
Which we're not really using for this. I know that there's partial protection, but it's so little that they actually don't recommend it at this point.
By the 19th century, leprosy had become rare in the Mediterranean countries and disappeared from Norway and England, essentially.
Cool.
So what about America?
We did some shitty things.
Where did we come in? So I know we're all shocked by this, but before settlers reached America, leprosy did not exist here.
Of course it did. Of course we brought that over with us.
Yeah. So it was likely introduced by European explorers, including Columbus, that guy, and later spread through transatlantic slave trade and European immigration.
Yeah.
Yep.
We done anything good in history?
It's rare.
Yeah.
It's rare. But yeah, so most likely leprosy was brought over here just through expansion, and now it's here. And I guess that would have been around 500 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where does the medicine come in? Because we really haven't talked about any.
Yeah, but I mean, we're not treating these people.
Yeah. So one of the first major breakthroughs occurred in 1874 when Gerard Hansen discovered Mycobacterium leprae.
Of course, we named it after the guy that discovered it.
We did?
Hansen's disease.
Oh, we later did. Yeah.
Yeah. Bernie, come on.
I'm sorry. I'm still not used to calling it that. Hansen's disease. Yeah. You're right.
Yep.
He got it.
He got it. I mean, I guess if you discovered it, you can have it. Just wish I had a cool last name. Like if they called something Smith's disease, like, okay.
I know everybody's asking right now, well, why didn't you take...
Listen, the babies have your genetics. We can have my last name. Also, everyone pronounced your last name wrong.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Not my last name anymore, so.
No.
But yeah, if you wanted a cool last name, you could have taken mine.
It's not that cool, but go ahead.
Ouch. Okay. So making leprosy the first human disease proven to be caused by a bacterium. Throughout this time, that tree oil I was talking about,
it's coming to the western side.
Yep, remained the primary treatment until the early 20th century. Though it was limited on its effectiveness, it was really the one thing they knew that would kind of work.
Yeah.
In the 1940s, sulfone therapy was introduced by Guy Fagette.
Another guy.
A guy.
Another guy.
Yeah, another guy.
We had one last episode.
Yeah, I think I have one for the case file too.
Same guy?
No, different guy. Wow, must have been a really popular name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although effective, it required prolonged treatments and eventually bacterial resistance emerged. So couldn't just stick with this one alone.
No.
In 1959, Charles Shepard developed the mouse footpad model for studying bacterial multiplication. So now we're really doing research about how bacteria spreads and all that good stuff. And in 1968, researchers successfully inoculated M. leprae into the 9-banded armadillo, providing a new experimental model for research.
Okay, so I'm interested in this 9-banded armadillo because my research tells me it is the only host other than humans that leprosy or Hansen's disease survives in. So did we give it to the armadillo, or is it just a lucky son of a gun?
Both. So scientists did inoculate these armadillos with leprosy in order to have more research and be able to conduct experiments. It also is a natural disease within these animals.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So because they are so prone to it and it's able to survive.
And it's able to survive, which we'll get to in my segment a little bit more, but they have a cooler body temperature and leprosy survives better at cooler body temperatures. So that's why it can survive in these animals.
Yeah. So basically, in order to study it, they already knew that the armadillos had a naturally susceptible immune system to the disease. Since they knew that already, they injected it into them in order to study its effects on them in order to get answers for humans. Okay. So both it naturally occurs in wild 9-banded armadillos, and they would also inoculate the armadillos in order to study things like nerve damage, disease progression, and then also to test potential treatments. This essentially just gave them a larger research pool.
Yeah. Okay.
So, which is kind of sad.
I mean, it is sad.
Also, these armadillos are still here in America.
Yes.
Mostly in the Southeast, right?
Yep.
So they could have leprosy and they can give it to you.
Yes.
So watch out.
Watch out. Don't pet no armadillos.
Yeah. Don't be going around petting. I mean, that's the new slogan for the show, really. It's like, don't try this at home. Don't pet 9-banded armadillos.
Don't try your chest tube at home.
Yeah. And don't pet 9-banded armadillos.
Can I pet that dog?
No. For treatment, rifampicin and clofazimine were added to sulfone therapy, forming a multi-drug therapy.
It's exciting it's been there for that long because we are still using multi-drug therapy with very similar medications, I'll say.
In 1981, this became the standard treatment by the World Health Organization. The therapy is highly effective and has been provided free globally for many years.
So I have this in my notes, so we'll go ahead and talk about it. I think that is so cool. So it's covered by the WHO, the World Health Organization. Anyone that has leprosy gets this multi-drug treatment covered for free anywhere in the world.
That's wild.
Right? And there's still tens of thousands of people being diagnosed with leprosy a year. But yeah, so that these people can have access to the medications, they are paying for it.
Yeah, it's weird because this is one of those diseases that I think people are like, we gotta get this eradicated because it is brutal.
Yeah.
You know, and it's visible.
Yes.
That's the thing about some of these. It's like, if it's not visible, people can generally ignore it for a long time. Not that this wasn't ignored, but I think when it comes with physical disformities, it's something that people kind of take more seriously.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree for sure.
So the disease persists in many endemic regions still. In 2018, over 1,000 new cases were reported worldwide.
There was a study, I don't remember which country it was in, but they knew that leprosy was being underreported. So they went door to door, and just by symptoms and physical exam alone, without needing to confirm with the skin biopsy, the numbers went up by like tens of thousands. And I want to say it was India, but I might be wrong. And that's when they realized like we have a whole endemic still happening in India and we need to do something about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, leprosy remains strongly associated with poverty, poor sanitation, and limited access to healthcare.
Things tend to do when they stick around.
Yeah. So that's leprosy. I would probably say it still has a really bad stigma.
Yes.
With
yes,
it.
Yes.
People don't like things that make them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So if people make them uncomfortable because of the way they look, they don't like that.
Yeah.
And so they'll do anything they can to be comfortable, and even if that means shunning people away or,
Yeah, I agree.
worse.
Well, let's talk about medicine today. It doesn't get much better. I hate to tell you guys. So, medicine today, as I've already alluded to, when I started doing these notes, I just had a patient last night on my shift who had this weird patch of numbness that wasn't explained, and she had these skin findings, and I don't think she had leprosy, okay? I don't. But as I was finishing up my notes this morning, I just realized now I'm going to think all my patients that come in with like paresthesias and unexplained like hand weakness or numbness or, the weird things that they come in with where I'm like, this isn't a stroke, this isn't a stroke. I'm going to be concerned they have leprosy and I'm going to say it's my tinning and someone's going to laugh at me. And that's fine.
It's fine.
That's fine. Yeah. So all my patients now essentially have leprosy in my mind and I am not going to have a good time with this. So let's really dive deep into the anatomy. We're going to come back to the body's nervous system. We've talked a lot about the central nervous system, but now we're going to talk about the peripheral nervous system. So 2 parts of the body's nervous system, your CNS, central, and your PNS, your peripheral. Your peripheral nervous system is defined as everything that is not the central nervous system. And that's the way it's defined in like textbooks too. Yeah.
Clever.
AKA not the brain and spinal cord, but everything else.
Got it.
It sends information to the brain from senses and carries out commands from the brain to the body. So it does the Lord's work, There are 2 different sections of the peripheral nervous system. There's the autonomic and the somatic. So the autonomic runs automatically without thought. So think about your breathing, your heartbeat, your blood pressure, things that we can't control. Then the somatic are functions that you manage by thinking about them. So moving your hands, walking, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
The cranial nerves are also a part of the peripheral nervous system. I saw 2 different sites say it differently. One said that it was 10 out of 12 cranial nerves, and one said that it was 11 out of 12 cranial nerves. And off the top of my head, I should have wrote it down, but I think it was cranial nerve 2. That's definitely a part of the central nervous system, but the rest are a part of the peripheral nervous system. And then the 31 pairs of spinal nerves are a part of the peripheral nervous system. And these spinal nerves branch out and become smaller and smaller nerves that spread throughout the entire body all the way to our fingertips. So that's how you can kind of picture the nervous system.
Eek.
Now I'm going to geek out because I don't know why, but I always thought this next piece of information was so interesting to learn about in undergrad, which is so silly. And I remember every time it came up in a biology class, I was stoked.
Yeah.
So neurons are cells that send and relay signals, as you can imagine. The cell body is the main part of the cell, and then there's an axon that extends outward from the cell body. There are these finger-like extensions where electrical signals become chemical signals via synapses. So synapses are where we transmit signals from one axon, neuron into the next neuron. You also have dendrites, a part of neurons, which are small branch-like extensions that are the receiving point for chemical signals from synapses. So axons send, dendrites receive. Then you have the myelin or the myelin sheath. That is a very thin layer that surrounds the axon and acts as a protective covering. And then you have these gaps in the myelin sheath as you go down that are called the nodes of Ranvier. And these are, like I said, periodic gaps along the myelin sheath and action potentials, aka how we send signals up and back and forth from the brain, actually jump these nodes of Ranvier to process quicker. And so it's called saltatory conduction, which if you don't know in Spanish, and I go Spanish, not Latin, because that's the language I know, but in Spanish, saltar means to jump. And so it literally means jumping conductions because they jump from node of Ranvier to node of Ranvier. Now, where you'll see damage and what people most often have heard of is in multiple sclerosis. there's a breakdown of this myelin sheath, which means there's less nerve conduction, that we're not able to transmit these signals as quickly. And so you'll see some of those changes in those patients. But leprosy is directly affecting this as well, and it's just less well known. So you also have glial cells, and these cells are responsible for developing and maintaining neurons when you're young, and then managing how neurons work throughout life. They protect the nervous system, they control chemical balance in your nervous system, and there are these specific type of glial cells called Schwann cells. And Schwann cells are the name of the game in leprosy. Schwann cells specifically create the myelin sheath around the axons that we were just talking about, support, protect, and repair the neurons, and can regenerate damaged neurons. So if you can imagine, if these are being damaged, our myelin sheath can't be repaired, you can see how we start getting some of these nerve issues in this disease.
Right.
Yeah. So leprosy has a direct affinity for these Schwann cells. So breaks down the myelin sheath and doesn't allow it to be repaired.
And that's why you can have feeling and then you can lose feeling.
Yes. And when you lose it, you're not going
to get it back.
Yep. Yeah. So remember that myelin sheath is so important because it helps to increase signal transmission speed. Over time, you'll have sensation decrease until it's gone. And this breakdown of the myelin sheath is called demyelination. So damage or loss of the myelin sheath, slowed or blocked nerve signals, which we've been dancing around this whole time. And that's why we see the changes in leprosy. I geek out about this. I think it's so interesting to learn how signals are carried, to and from the body. And the saltatory conduction, I think, is so interesting. And the fact that they jump these nodes around the ear versus actually running their way down the myelin sheath. I don't know. I think all of it's really interesting.
So is there some sensations that have to run the whole thing and some that jump?
Yeah. So it depends. I don't have this off the top of my head anymore, but essentially like temperature sensations take a different route in because you need to know a lot quicker if something is hot to take your hand off of it versus other sensations take a different route in, if that makes sense. The body knows very well what to send quickly to protect people.
Yeah. Crazy to think about like evolution wise.
Yes.
If that was not always the case.
Yes.
That you stuck your hand in something hot and it took you 3 times as long because you had to go through and then you get the jumps later in evolution and then now you can know.
Yeah. Fun stuff. So that brings us into leprosy. Now that we kind of know the pathophysiology behind it. So we talked about it. Leprosy is called today Hansen's disease. It is defined as a chronic granulomatous infection caused by Microbacterium leprae, which Bernie kind of already talked about. Now, if you're like, what the heck is granulomatous? Because I also am. Yes. It is chronic inflammation due to the formation of granulomas. Very helpful. And granulomas are just small clusters of immune cells. So chronic inflammation of clusters of immune cells that it's caused by this bacteria.
I love it when they put the word in the definition.
Yes, me too.
That's like English 101. When we were in class, it was like when you write a definition, you cannot use the word you're defining in the definition.
I agree.
But then these medical texts all do it.
I agree. I agree. We talked about it, but it has an affinity for the skin and nerves, and it is one of the most common causes of non-traumatic peripheral neuropathy worldwide. Now, I read that and I said, I'm not really convinced, but then I remembered, because I think about diabetic neuropathy, but then I remember that this is worldwide, and when you think about India and how large that population is, you can kind of imagine it a little bit more versus in the United States, we're seeing a lot more cases of like diabetic neuropathy causing this. Unfortunately, the damage caused by the neuropathy is irreversible. So while we can cure this disease, all damage is irreversible. There's nothing that we can do about it. Microbacterium leprae was the only known cause of leprosy until 2008. And then Microbacterium lepromatosis was identified in Mexico. And now we are seeing those 2 different strains. I know.
I don't like that.
Yeah. So bringing that back together, we talked about it a little bit. Well, we talked about it a lot, but it's primarily infects Schwann cells in the peripheral nerves, and it leads to nerve damage due to causing demyelination and the loss of axonal conductance. This causes the peripheral neuropathy or numbness that people describe. Interestingly enough, the bacteria optimally grows at 27 to 33 degrees Celsius or 80 to 91-ish degrees Fahrenheit. It supports the theory that it spreads more efficiently at colder regions of the body, like the skin or the nerves close to the surface of the skin or the membranes in the upper respiratory tract. And so, our core body temperature is different than the temperature of my fingertips. Yeah. And so I just think it's interesting, and that's how we talked about it, but that's how we're seeing it in the 9-banded armadillo as well.
Yep.
Yeah. There are 6 types of leprosy or Hansen's disease, and it all varies in degree of the severity of the presentation. I am not going to go through each one. There are charts, and it depends on like 6 different characteristics for each one, and there's a ton of overlap. And if you're interested, go look at it. Okay.
Google it.
But there's tuberculoid, borderline tuberculoid, mid-borderline, borderline lepromatose, lepromatose leprosy, and indeterminate.
Determinate. Good. Helpful. Yeah. Thanks.
Yes. So we will not be getting into those today. I hinted at transmission earlier. We've said it multiple times. This is actually not a highly contagious disease. I'm questioning if maybe it was more contagious before, and maybe it's changed. Maybe we've gotten better at fighting it off, all of the things, but it's not highly contagious. We have 2 known exit routes from the body, so the skin and the nasal mucosa. And people before were really, really concerned about the skin exit route because you bump into people all day.
Yeah.
There is a large number of these organisms deep in the dermis, but whenever they take skin biopsies and they see it more right on the surface, there's not a sufficient enough amount to actually pass it on to anybody.
Yeah.
So even though they think it's passed through skin, it sounds like it's more passed through deep skin, infections, wounds, things of that nature.
Yeah. So it'd be really hard to just bump into somebody and give
Yes.
them leprosy. Yeah.
Precisely. The entry route is not definitively known even now. So we think it could be skin, but we also don't really think so based on what I just said. But we think even more that it's the upper respiratory tract, so most likely nasal droplets and secretions. The incubation period is a minimum of a few weeks and up to 30 years before people show signs. 30 years.
That's wild.
That's wild. The average incubation period is 3 to 10 years, though.
Yeah.
Still a long time. If someone's like, who'd you get leprosy from? I don't know.
Yeah. In the case file that I'm going to talk about, they don't know who this guy got leprosy from.
Because of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it didn't spike until he hit puberty.
Yeah. So risk factors, endemic areas that have inadequate bedding, contaminated water, insufficient diet, people with compromised immune systems. So if you think about like an HIV or AIDS patient, and armadillo exposures. So in the southern United States, it is native in the 9-banded armadillo. They have a lower core temperature, so it survives really easily there. And it is the only confirmed source other than humans. I think that's cool.
It's an interesting fact.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Don't be
petting no armadillos.
Armadillos. Watch out.
So signs and symptoms, there's really a myriad of different presentations, unfortunately. I'll go back over the cardinal signs. To me, they're not incredibly helpful, but definitely something that I would think about a little bit more. So hypopigmented, so decreased coloration, or erythematous, so very red, skin patches with loss of sensation, thickened peripheral nerves, and then on a skin biopsy, seeing acid fast bacilli. Yeah, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, a lot of things can cause your skin to get red too. So it's
yes. But then kind of separating that out a little bit into what we should look out for as healthcare providers. Ill-marked raised lesions throughout the body, and that's more of the lepromatous form. And this comes with sensory loss, which we talked about just before. Paresthesias with associated numbness in the extremities. So paresthesias is that like numbness, or is that like tingling sensation, how people describe like ants crawling or something like that. That's the definition of paresthesias. So you have paresthesias with associated numbness. I just had a patient last night that had this, right? And so I
just
know.
Woke up this morning with my whole arm felt like that. So
I mean, you probably slept on it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I could have leprosy. I don't know.
My girl, it's been going on for months.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's a little scary, but it's okay. It's okay. That's what I'm telling myself. Painless burns and extremities. And I think this is more secondary to the peripheral neuropathy, that people burn themselves and don't know that they've burned themselves. Enlarged, sensitized peripheral nerves. I would love to know what that actually feels like. And then in specific areas of the body, feet have plantar ulcers with secondary infections, and walking becomes painful for the patient. So they don't actually feel the wounds or the ulcers, but then when it gets deep enough, that's when the walking becomes painful for these patients. Nose, there's damage to the nasal mucosa, and you'll see that in a lot of pictures where the nose starts to almost like degrade in on itself. Eyes, it can cause glaucoma, and it also causes corneal insensitivity. So then people aren't feeling when they have like abrasions or an ulcer or something like that, and that leads to scarring and blindness.
I also read that people then forget to blink.
Yes.
And so then their corneas like dry out.
Yes. Yeah. And then kidneys in the lepromatous leprosy. I feel like I'm pronouncing that wrong, but it's fine.
They pronounce a lot of things wrong.
It's fine. There is renal failure occasionally. After significant development, people develop facial paralysis, lack of eyebrows and eyelashes, and then a perforated nasal septum because of how much of that like nasal degradation that you're seeing. Yeah.
That sucks.
It's a shitty disease.
Yeah, it's a shitty one.
And I want everyone to remember all of these things are irreversible once they happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other things to note is that there are these things called leprosy reactions. This is when the immune system produces inflammatory reactions secondary to the leprosy. It occurs in both untreated and treated leprosy. Less common in treated, but it still occurs. So there's type 1 and type 2. Very original names. Type 2 is due to an increase in cell-mediated immunity. There is fever and inflammation of pre-existing skin and peripheral nerve lesions. So you've had them, and then all of a sudden they get much worse. They become inflamed. This causes skin edema, so the swelling of the skin, erythema, so redness, and then tenderness and worsening nerve function. If it's not treated early, it causes significant, irreversible nerve damage. And the treatment for this is prednisone, so just a steroid.
Steroids.
Yeah. Type 2.
Steroids that make you crazy.
Make you crazy. Yo, our pup is on steroids right now.
He's wild.
And I won't lie, I'm sad because I'm kind of worried that he's only doing so well because he's on steroids. But also, I can't wait for him to get off of steroids because, wow, he's so bad.
He's
like,
wild.
You can't yell at him. He has cancer.
I know.
Yeah.
He's just really into counter surfing right now.
Very, very. And stealing things from the child.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's type 2, which is called erythema nodosum leprosum. Nodosum leprosum. I thought you'd get a laugh out of that. Okay.
Sorry, I just realized you said type 2 for both.
The first one was type 1. First one was type 1. Okay. Now we're at type 2. So this is systemic inflammatory reactions, and it appears to be like a vasculitis, so inflammation of the blood vessels, or like a paniculitis. It's less common since the clofazimine drug was added to the regimen, but we are still seeing it. And it causes red, painful papules or nodules that then turn into pustules and ulcerations, which causes fever, neuritis, lymphadenitis, orchitis, arthritis, basically inflammation. Inflammation everywhere. Glomerulonephritis, which is kidneys, just causes kind of like widespread inflammation and damage. Treatment for this in mild cases is aspirin, and then in significant cases is prednisone and antimicrobials. Yeah.
Doesn't get any better.
It feels like polio where it just like keeps going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just won't let up. It couldn't just be leprosy, of course.
No, it's never that easy. Diagnosis. Mainstay of diagnosis is with a skin biopsy. There's also a PCR out, but I actually didn't find that much information about it, so I'm not sure if it's just not used as much, but typically we're doing skin biopsy. In labs, you'll see a patient with elevated leukocytes, low hemoglobin, so anemia, low hematocrit, increased liver function tests, so that's like your ALT, AST, and alkaline phosphatase, and then presence of elevated serum CRP, which is an inflammatory marker. When should we have a clinical suspicion? Always for me right now. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. If a patient has these skin lesions with peripheral neuropathy or these skin lesions with numbness over top of them, I definitely think we should be thinking more this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Especially if they traveled somewhere with known or they touched an armadillo.
Yeah. So complications of this, peripheral neuropathy is one of the biggest complications, which we've talked about a lot, but this causes a deterioration to
your sense of
touch. And so you have an inability to feel pain and temperature. This is the exact same type of, this is very similar to a diabetic neuropathy and how they end up with diabetic foot wounds and don't know about it. And so these patients, when they have wounds and they don't know and they're not checking them themselves, they become very sick very quickly because it's not being clean. They're continuing to like put it in, socks or whatever, and stuff's getting all up in there. Like shoes are gross, even the inside of our shoes.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately we do see that. There's also muscle weakness that leads to deformity secondary to the weakness. It causes claw fingers in a lot of patients. So you can just like look up images on Google and it's really sad. Specifically, it'll also happen in the 4th and 5th digits because of ulnar involvement, but there are patients with all 5 fingers being affected. And then due to peroneal nerve involvement, patients will have foot drop, which makes it obviously very difficult to ambulate.
Yeah.
As far as treatment, we do use a multi-drug therapy now, and it quickly gets the patient to a non-infectious state, which is really great news. We use multi-drug therapy in order to decrease the chance of a drug resistance, which we talked about earlier. That's the same thing that you're going to see in HIV. When we're using multiple drugs, it's really hard for them to build up a resistance. The 2 main drugs that are used at the same time is dapsone and rifampin. And then if a patient has lepromatous disease, they add clofazimine.
I think Damson, the one I was saying earlier, this is the other name for that.
Probably. And we talked about earlier, but the World Health Organization provides these drugs for free to all patients with leprosy around the world.
Thank goodness.
It does take months for the erythema, so the redness and the hardening of the lesions, to dissipate, and it can take years for these lesions to fully clear, if they ever do. Starting meds in a timely manner doesn't make this a curable disease, but it's not reversible in terms of nerve damage or deformities.
Yeah.
Yeah, bad time.
Yeah, you definitely don't want it to get too far.
Yeah. So that brings us to prevention. It's not very contagious, so the risk of spread is very low. So there's a little bit less information about the prevention of this when you look it up. Once treatment has begun for these patients, leprosy cannot be spread. And so we were just talking about how quickly these medications bring them down to a non-contagious state. Best prevention is avoiding contact with bodily fluids and the rash with infected people. We don't always know when people are infected, especially for that incubation period.
They're not wearing bells.
They're not wearing bells anymore, and they shouldn't have to wear bells, okay?
Yeah, also you have to spend a lot of time. I think that's one of the keys. Like, you have to spend a lot of time with this person. And so if you're spending a lot of time with someone, maybe you notice.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And then the BCG vaccine, I will try to pronounce it, Bacil.
I didn't. I just said BCG earlier.
Bacil calmette guerin vaccine is used to prevent tuberculosis. There's some protection against leprosy in this, but it's not typically used for that purpose because it's not a strong recommendation. A single dose of rifampicin is used as a preventative treatment for contacts of leprosy patients. I don't feel like we very often have single dose treatments after contact. So I thought that was super
That's
cool.
interesting. Yeah.
And then that brings us right into today for some more recent data on this. So in 2000, the World Health Organization identified it as eradicated. And this was defined, I have such an issue with this term. This was defined as a prevalence less than 1 case per 10,000 people. That's still a lot.
Yeah.
You think about there's 7 billion people in this world. I'm sure we're at more than that by now. And we're defining it as that.
1 in 10,000?
In 2000, it was still being found in developing countries, including India, Indonesia, Brazil, Nigeria, Bangladesh. And then there was a new study put out in 2020 where there was 130,000 new cases reported. 73% were between India, Brazil, and Indonesia. So we're still seeing this as an endemic in these countries.
Yeah.
In 2020, there was 149 cases in the United States, all of them in California, Florida, Hawaii, Louisiana, New York, and Texas.
All over.
All over.
I guess not in the Midwest.
So that's the medicine on leprosy.
Wow.
Hansen disease.
Hansen's disease.
Yeah.
Now you guys know to call it Hansen's disease.
Yeah, now we know.
Now we know.
Hansen's disease.
Because I had no idea.
No idea. Which brings us to our ethics autopsy. You want to start with the history?
Yeah, historically, not great.
No.
As far
we treated people
we
so
treated
bad.
people really, really bad when they had this disease. You know? And I understand that people didn't understand how it was spread and they didn't quite get it, but at the same time, essentially mark people as dead to society and then put them into houses and shun them away.
Yeah.
Was really, really grotesque.
I agree.
Yeah, so not great. Plus, just the writings about it that stigmatized people and caused hatred and violence towards people that were already sick. Well, that's a shitty human being.
Yeah.
You know?
And it was considered a sin because they thought this was God sent and was sent to you because you were a bad person.
You got leprosy because you were a bad person, even though you got it when you were an infant.
Yeah.
You just didn't show up till 10 years later.
Exactly.
And then you were a 10-year-old and they were like, wow, you are an awful person.
Awful person.
God has smited you. It's like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Let's have a little compassion here.
Yeah. I think for me, it brings me to a disease is not truly gone, even though we're stating it's eradicated. And to me, that just makes me think about, even as a healthcare professional, when someone told me a disease was eradicated before we started this podcast,
you would think it was non-existent.
Non-existent, or like, 1 in 500,000 people or something, just like one-off cases that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But that's not the case whatsoever. And so, like, for me, what does it mean to be eradicated if there's marginalized communities, endemic areas with poor sanitation, all of that? They're still suffering from this disease.
Yeah.
Cut it or keep it.
Well, we're cutting leprosy because that shit sucks.
Yeah, that shit sucks. We're cutting leprosy. Get it out of here.
Cutting people's behavior and stigma towards leprosy.
Per usual.
Yep. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
So not great.
And then that brings us, we have 2 listener questions today because we actually couldn't decide. So for my clinical friends, would leprosy make your differential for peripheral neuropathy? And for me, right now, yes.
Because you just read about it.
Because I just read about it. But here's the issue. Anytime you put in a differential, in the emergency room at least, I have to justify why I did not diagnose it or go further down the route. And I'm not saying that won't make me think about it or document it, but like, no, I did not get a skin biopsy on this patient, you know?
Yeah.
And so it'll just be interesting to see, like, do I really change my practice here in the United States where we had 159 cases, or I don't know. I
think diabetic is much more common.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree. There's also like stress-induced peripheral neuropathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the other question is, if you were told you had a disease that would isolate you from society, what would you fear more, the illness or the stigma?
The stigma. You can get through anything if you have people with you to help you. But you don't even have people dropping off groceries to you anymore, and you can't go into the grocery store. You know, like, yeah, the stigma for sure.
Yeah, or you're just stuck in a house with a whole bunch of other people that are also sick, and you're just having to take care of yourself and be stuck there, and you don't exist in society, and that's just no way to live.
I agree. Which brings us to the end of our podcast today.
Yeah. So leprosy sucks. Don't go pet armadillos.
Don't go pet armadillos.
That's the number one thing I learned today.
Okay, not Hansen's disease.
I'm just kidding. It was a joke. Okay.
You can support us by following us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. You can find the links to all of that in any of our show notes or in our link tree, which is where we've gone to put all of our links in one. You can listen anywhere you get your podcast at this point. And best way to support us is leaving a review, commenting, sharing the podcast, just continuing to listen and keeping this going for us.
Also, if you're interested in starting a podcast and want some software to help you along with that, we use Riverside. And if you guys want to try it out, we have a link in our link tree for a little discount. Check it out if you want to. Yeah. If you have an idea for a case or an episode, go ahead and DM us. If you have a story that would be interesting that you would like shared on the podcast, go ahead and DM us that as well. And hopefully we can create a cool episode that way.
Yeah. And then next episode, we have a case file coming this week. And then we'll be real honest with you. We haven't put a single thought to our next episode because we are trying to get to vacation. So it'll be a surprise for all of us.
It'll be a surprise for everyone. Whoops. Yeah, we're going to talk about the leper king of Jerusalem in our case file.
Okay. Well, on that note, class is dismissed.
Stay safe.
Stay curious.
And don't try this at home.
Unless you own a bone saw. Bye, guys.
Bye.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We discuss the history of medicine, not your personal medical situation. Nothing you hear on this show should ever be taken as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Some of the information discussed may be incorrect or become outdated over time. We do our best to stay current with medical knowledge, but medicine changes quickly. Additionally, because we do not work in every specific field we discuss, there may be times when we misspeak or misinterpret information. We're all human and we're doing our best for the podcast. Every medical case is unique, and your health decisions should always be made in consultation with your own qualified healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about your health, please reach out to a licensed provider who can give you guidance based on your individual needs.